The first mercenary died without knowing what hit him. Rachel's rounds caught him between the shoulder blades, and as he bent over a patient's bed, his knife halfway to the sedated Marine's throat. He collapsed forward, his weight pinning the blade against the mattress instead of flesh. The second mercenary spun toward the gunfire, his weapon rising. Rachel was already moving using the fallen supply cabinet as cover. His rounds punched through metal and plastic, sending medical instruments clattering across the floor. She waited for the pause, that half second, when training demanded a tactical reload, and then she was up and firing. 3 shots, center mass throat head. He went down in a heap. "Contact, medical bay, contact!" The radio on the dead man's vest crackled with urgent voices. 2 down, repeat, 2 down. Rachel grabbed the radio, crushed it under her boot. No communications meant no coordination. No coordination meant they'd have to search for her room by room, bed by bed. That gave her an advantage. She moved to the nearest patient, checked his pulse. Still alive, still breathing. The mercenary had been seconds away from killing him, but seconds were all Rachel had needed. "Doc," the voice came from behind an overturned gurney. Petty Officer Martinez, one of the corpsmen. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "What do we do?" "You stay down. You keep quiet, but you don't move until I tell you it's clear." "But Jenkins." "Jenkins is dead. Chen's wounded. If you want to join them, keep talking." Rachel's voice carried an edge that made Martinez flinch. "I need you alive to treat casualties after this is over." "Understand?" He nodded, his eyes wide. Rachel checked the AK's magazine again. 23 rounds. The M9 had 10. 33 rounds total against however many mercenaries were still operational. The math wasn't good, but math had never been her strong suit anyway. She'd always preferred geometry, angles, trajectories, the clean physics of ballistic motion. She heard voices in the corridor, multiple contacts moving with tactical discipline. They'd found their dead and now they were hunting. Rachel moved to the doorway, pressed her back against the wall. The voices grew closer, speaking English with Eastern European accents. Contractors, then probably ex-military, the kind who worked for whoever paid best and didn't ask questions about targets. Said she was just a nurse. "Nurses don't shoot like that. Check every room. She's got to be..." Rachel stepped into the corridor and fired. The lead contractor took 2 rounds in the chest and went down. His partner dove for cover, returning fire, but Rachel was already gone, melting back into the medical bay. More voices, more movement. They were converging on her position now, drawn by the gunfire like sharks to blood. Good. Every second they spent hunting her was a second they weren't executing patients. She grabbed a morphine syringe from a tray, jabbed it into her thigh through her pants. The pain came first, sharp and immediate, then the chemical warmth spreading through her leg. Not enough to impair her, just enough to dull the burning in her muscles. She'd been running on adrenaline for too long, and her body was starting to protest. A grenade clattered through the doorway. Rachel moved on, instinct, diving behind a steel medical cabinet as the world exploded. Shrapnel tore through the room, shredding equipment, punching holes in walls. Her ears rang. Blood ran down her face from a cut above her eyebrow. But she was alive, and alive meant she could still fight. 2 mercenaries rushed through the smoke weapons up, expecting to find her dead or wounded. They found her standing with the AK, raised her face a mask of blood and determination. She killed them both before they could fire. The AK's bolt locked back. Empty. Rachel dropped it, pulled the M9, kept moving. The morphine was hitting now, everything taking on a dreamlike quality at the edges. She focused on breathing, on putting one foot in front of the other, on the steady rhythm of combat that her body remembered even when her mind wanted to forget. "All units, medical is hot." Repeat, medical is hot. The voice came from outside, distorted by the storm, but unmistakably American. The Army's quick reaction force had finally arrived. About damn time. But the mercenaries weren't retreating. If anything, the gunfire intensified. They were professionals, and professionals finished the job before they exfiltrated, which meant Ramsey was still the target, still the prize, and they weren't leaving without him. Rachel found Martinez still hiding behind the gurney. "Where's Ramsey?" "West Wing private room. Senior Chief moved him there before the attack started." "Show me." "Doc, I can't." "You can and you will. Move." They ran through smoke and chaos, past rooms where patients huddled in terror, past dead mercenaries and destroyed equipment. The compound had become a maze of destruction, every corridor, a potential kill zone, every shadow a threat. Martinez led her to a reinforced door at the far end of the West Wing. Rachel tried the handle, locked. Ramsey, it is Lieutenant Garrison, Navy Medical, open up. Nothing. Ramsey, I've got wounded staff and patients scattered through this compound. If you don't open this door, I'm going to assume you're already dead and move on. The door cracked open. Ramsey's face appeared pale and tight. How do I know you're not compromised? Because if I was compromised, I'd have blown this door off its hinges instead of knocking. Rachel pushed past him into the room. It was small, windowless, with concrete walls and a single cot. Defensible. How many exits? Just the one. Then we're trapped. Rachel moved to the door, checked the corridor. Clear for now, but that wouldn't last. How many contractors did they send? Intelligence said 8 to 12. I've killed 6, maybe 7. Hard to keep count. She ejected the M9's magazine, checked it. 4 rounds left. You got a weapon. Ramsey pulled a compact Glock from his waistband. This and 1 spare mag. Then we've got maybe 30 rounds between us, and however many mercenaries are left. Have a lot more than that. Rachel's mind raced through options, discarding them as fast as they appeared. Hold this position, they'd be overrun. Run for the perimeter, they'd be cut down in the open. Where's Randall? Last I heard, pinned down at the eastern barrier. They hit him hard when the attack started. Casualties. Unknown. Rachel's jaw tightened. The SEALs were supposed to be the ace in the hole, the professional killers who could turn any fight. If they were pinned down, if they couldn't break through to medical, then she and Ramsey were on their own. Martinez spoke up, his voice shaking. Doc Chen's gonna bleed out if we don't get her to surgery soon. The tourniquet's holding, but I know. Rachel did know. She'd done the math the moment she'd applied that tourniquet. Chen had maybe 2 hours before tissue death became irreversible, maybe 3 if she was lucky. Where is she? Main ward behind the supply cabinet. Can you get to her? I think so, but then go. Take this. Rachel handed him the M9. 4 rounds, don't waste them. Get to Chen, stabilize her, and find somewhere to hide until this is over. What are you going to do? I'm going to keep Ramsey alive. Now go. Martinez hesitated for just a moment, then took the pistol and ran. Ramsey watched him disappear into the smoke. You just gave away your sidearm. I gave him a chance to save a life. That's worth more than 4 bullets. Rachel turned back to the CIA officer. Why do they want you dead so badly? I ran an asset network. One of my assets sold information about a Russian arms deal. The buyers weren't happy. Russian. Syrian government forces backed by Moscow. They were purchasing anti-aircraft systems from a Turkish middleman. My asset gave me the location, the inventory, the whole deal. We hit the warehouse 3 days ago, destroyed everything. And now they want payback. They want to send a message. You don't interfere with Russian interests without consequences. Ramsey's face was grim. These contractors are Wagner Group, former Spetsnaz, current mercenaries. They don't take prisoners, and they don't leave witnesses. Rachel processed that. Wagner Group had a reputation for brutality that made most military contractors look like Boy Scouts. If they were here, if they'd been contracted for this hit, then the Russian response was personal. How much are you worth to them? Alive, nothing, dead. The message they want to send. Ramsey checked his Glock again, a nervous gesture. They'll kill everyone in this compound just to prove they can. Then we don't let them. Rachel moved back to the door, listened. Footsteps, multiple contacts moving methodically through the West Wing. They're doing a room-by-room sweep. When they get to this door, they're going to breach hard and fast. Flashbangs, overwhelming force, standard Wagner doctrine. You sound like you fought them before. I've fought people like them. Rachel's voice was distant, remembering. Hindu Kush 3 years ago. My spotter and I spent 2 weeks behind enemy lines tracking a Taliban warlord. His security was ex-Russian military trainers from Moscow teaching insurgent tactics. We took them all down, but it cost us. Your spotter didn't make it. None of my team made it, just me. Rachel's hands tightened on the empty AK. I'm not planning a repeat performance. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Rachel grabbed Ramsey, pulled him into the corner behind the cot. When they breach, stay down. Don't move. Don't breathe aloud. Just stay down. What about you? I'll handle it. The door exploded inward. Not breached, blown. The contractors had used a shaped charge, precise and devastating. The blast took out the door and most of the frame, filling the room with smoke and flying debris. 3 men rushed in, weapons up, moving with trained precision. They swept the room in overlapping fields of fire, checking corners, checking behind furniture. Professional. Thorough. They didn't check the ceiling. Rachel had climbed the ventilation shaft the moment she'd heard them preparing the charge. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders, but she'd made it work. Now she hung above the doorway, pressed against the metal, barely breathing. The lead contractor spoke into his radio. Room clear. Target not present. Moving to next. Rachel dropped on him like a stone. Her weight drove him to the floor, his weapon clattering away. Before his partners could react, she had his knife. Every Wagner contractor carried a combat blade, and she was using it. The second contractor turned his rifle, coming up. Too slow. Rachel threw the knife, watched it bury itself in his throat. He went down gurgling. The third contractor got his weapon on her, got his finger on the trigger. Rachel twisted, felt the rounds crack past her face. She closed the distance, got inside his reach, drove her palm into his nose. Bone crunched, blood sprayed. He staggered back. She took his rifle, turned it on him, and fired once. Silence. Rachel stood among the dead, breathing hard blood covering her uniform. Some of it was hers, most of it wasn't. Ramsey emerged from behind the cot, his face pale. Jesus Christ, who are you? I'm the person keeping you alive. Rachel grabbed ammunition from the dead contractors, reloaded. How many more? I don't know, maybe 3, maybe 4. Then we need to move. This room's compromised. She pulled Ramsey toward the door, checked the corridor. Clear. Stay behind me. Step where I step. Do exactly what I say when I say it. Understand? He nodded. They moved through the compound like ghosts, using smoke for cover, avoiding the main corridors. Rachel's training guided her instinctively check corners, watch sight lines, never silhouette against light. Ramsey followed without question, trusting her completely because he had no other choice. They found Senior Chief Randall in the eastern wing, bleeding from a shoulder wound, but still operational. 2 of his SEALs were with him, both wounded but fighting. The 4th was dead, his body covered with a poncho. Randall's eyes widened when he saw Rachel. Lieutenant, what the hell? No time. How many contractors left? 3, maybe 4. They're regrouping near the main entrance. Randall's voice was tight with pain. We can't get a clean shot in this storm. Visibility's garbage. Then we don't shoot it from range. We get close. Rachel checked her captured rifle. Full magazine, round chambered. I need your thermal scope. Wow, because I'm going to end this. Randall studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. You're not just a nurse. No, I'm not. Who are you? Right now, I'm the person with the best chance of keeping everyone in this compound alive. Rachel held out her hand. The scope, Senior Chief. He handed it over without another word. Rachel moved to the shattered eastern wall, the one the first RPG had destroyed. The storm still raged outside visibility, maybe 5 feet. Perfect conditions for what she needed to do. She attached the thermal scope to the rifle, raised it to her eye. The world shifted to heat signatures and cold darkness. Out near the perimeter, she saw them, 3 figures grouped together, weapons visible, discussing something, planning their next move. Range, one of the SEALs asked. 200 meters, winds gusting 40 knots from the east, visibility 0. Rachel's voice was calm, clinical. Standard doctrine says this shot's impossible. Then how? Standard doctrine never met me. She settled into the familiar rhythm, breathing, heartbeat. The space between seconds where the world held still. She'd done this 1,000 times in a dozen countries against targets who never knew death was coming. The rifle felt different from her old M40, but the principles were the same. Lead the wind, account for drop, trust the training. She fired. Through the thermal scope, she watched the first heat signature drop. The other 2 scattered, diving for cover. Rachel tracked them, patient, waiting for one of them to make a mistake. The storm was her ally, now hiding her position, making their return fire useless. The second contractor broke cover, running for a better position. Rachel fired again. He went down. The third one was smarter. He stayed hidden, didn't move, waiting for her to reveal herself. They could have stayed like that for hours, 2 professionals locked in a stalemate. Then the storm began to clear. Visibility improved from 5 feet to 10, then 20. Rachel saw the contractor, clearly now saw him, realizing his cover was evaporating, saw him making the choice to run or fight. He chose wrong. Rachel's final shot caught him mid-stride and he crumpled into the sand. Silence. Nothing but the dying wind and the sound of her own breathing. Randall spoke first. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Quantico, Marine Scout Sniper School, top of my class. Rachel lowered the rifle, ejected the magazine. Force Recon 2 Tours 47 confirmed kills. I died in the Hindu Kush 3 years ago. The Navy brought me back as something else. Why didn't you tell us? Because that person, the sniper, the Marine, she was supposed to stay dead. I came here to save lives, not take them. Rachel looked at the bodies outside, at the destruction around them. But when people threaten my patients, when they come into my hospital and start executing wounded soldiers, that person comes back whether I want her to or not. Randall nodded slowly. Your secret's safe with us, Lieutenant. What you did tonight. He paused. You saved a lot of lives. I killed a lot of people. Same thing in our line of work. Rachel didn't answer. She handed the rifle back to the SEAL, then turned and walked back toward the medical bay. There were patients to check on, wounded staff to treat, and Sarah Chen still needed surgery before her leg was lost to tissue death. The storm had passed. The mercenaries were dead. The immediate crisis was over. But Rachel knew this wasn't the end. It never was. Violence had a way of following certain people, of finding them no matter how far they ran or how deeply they buried their past. She tried to leave Lieutenant Rachel Garrison, Marine Scout Sniper, in a shallow grave in Afghanistan. Tonight had proven that grave wasn't deep enough. Rachel found Sarah Chen exactly where Martinez had left her, pale and shaking behind the overturned supply cabinet. The tourniquet had held, but the blood loss was catching up. Chen's lips had taken on a bluish tint, her breathing shallow and rapid. Hey! Rachel knelt beside her, checked the tourniquet tension. Still good. Stay with me, Sarah. I need you conscious. Hurts, Chen whispered. God, it hurts so bad. I know. That means you're alive. Dead people don't hurt. Rachel pulled an IV kit from her vest, started a line in Chen's arm. Martinez, where are you? The corpsman appeared from behind a collapsed gurney, the M9 still clutched in his shaking hands. Here, Doc. I'm here. I need lactated ringers, 2 bags. Typo-negative blood, 4 units. Surgical kit, the full trauma pack. Rachel's voice was steady, clinical, pushing down everything she'd just done outside. Move fast. She's got maybe 30 minutes before we lose the leg entirely. Martinez ran. Rachel stayed with Chen, holding her hand, feeling the weak pulse in her wrist. The shooting stopped, Chen said. Is it over? It's over. Jenkins, Rachel's jaw tightened. Jenkins didn't make it. Chen's eyes filled with tears. He was going to propose to his girlfriend next month. He showed me the ring last week. It was his grandmother's. I know. Did he suffer? Rachel thought about the shrapnel wound, the blood pooling beneath his head, the way his eyes had been open and empty when she checked for a pulse. No, it was fast. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that mattered, the kind that let people grieve without nightmares. Martinez returned with supplies. Rachel worked quickly, establishing the IV, transfusing blood, preparing for surgery. The main surgical tent was destroyed, but there was a backup OR in the western wing, smaller and less equipped, but functional. We need to move her, Rachel said. Martinez grabbed that end of the stretcher. On 3. They lifted Chen carefully, navigating through debris and destruction. The compound looked like something from a war zone, which Rachel supposed it was. Walls, blown out equipment, scattered blood and shell casings everywhere. The price of violence paid in full. The backup OR was cramped and hot, the air conditioning knocked out by the power fluctuations. Rachel scrubbed, quickly pulled on fresh gloves, and got to work. The shrapnel had torn through Chen's lateral thigh, missing the femoral artery by maybe 2 centimeters. Lucky. If it had hit the artery, Chen would have bled out before Rachel could have applied the tourniquet. BP's dropping, Martinez said from his position at the monitor. 90/50. Push another unit of O-negative. Keep her pressure up. Rachel's hands moved with practiced precision, irrigating the wound, removing foreign material, identifying damaged structures. Talk to me, Sarah. Tell me something. Anything. Like what? Chen's voice was weak but present. Like why you joined the Navy. Like what you're going to do when you get home. Like anything that keeps you talking and breathing. I joined because my dad was Navy. He was a corpsman in Vietnam. Saved 12 guys in one firefight. Chen's words came slowly, fighting through pain and medication. He always said the best thing you could do with your life was save someone else's. He was right. Rachel tied off a bleeder, moved to the next. What's waiting for you stateside? My sister, she's getting married in August. I'm supposed to be maid of honor. Then we make sure you're there. August's only 3 months away. Plenty of time. Rachel's voice stayed calm, reassuring, even as her hands worked through tissue that wanted to fall apart. What's your sister's name? Michelle. She's marrying this guy, David. He's an accountant. Super boring, but he makes her happy. Boring's good. Boring means safe. Rachel glanced at the monitor, blood pressure stabilizing. Good. You like him? He's okay. Little too conservative for my taste, but Michelle loves him. That's what matters, right? That's all that matters. The surgery took 40 minutes. When Rachel finally stepped back, Chen's leg was stabilized, the bleeding controlled, the tissue salvageable. Not pretty, but functional. Chen would walk again, maybe even run, if the physical therapy went well. She's going to make it, Martinez asked. She's going to make it. Rachel stripped off her gloves, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the bone-deep fatigue that came after combat. Get her to recovery. Monitor vitals every 15 minutes. Any change you find me. Yes, ma'am. Rachel walked out of the OR and straight into Senior Chief Randall. His shoulder was bandaged, his arm in a sling, but he was upright and functional. Behind him stood Captain Morrison and 3 MPs with sidearms drawn. Lieutenant Garrison, Morrison said. His voice was formal, careful. We need to talk. Rachel's stomach dropped. About what happened here tonight, about who you are, about why a Navy nurse has the skill set to take down an entire Wagner Group kill team. Morrison's eyes were hard. My office, now. They walked through the compound in silence. Soldiers stared as they passed, some with respect, some with fear, all with questions they wouldn't voice. Word had spread fast. The quiet nurse who kept to herself had killed 9 professional contractors with the efficiency of a trained assassin. Morrison's office was in the command building, a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a map of the region on the wall. He gestured for Rachel to sit. She remained standing. Sit down, Lieutenant. I'd prefer to stand, sir. That wasn't a request. Rachel sat. Morrison took the chair across from her, leaning back, studying her face like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. I pulled your file, he said finally. According to your records, your Lieutenant Rachel Garrison, Navy Nurse Corps, transferred from Bethesda Naval Hospital 6 weeks ago. Prior to that, you were at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton for 8 months. Before that, Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth. Clean record, excellent evaluations. Nothing remarkable except an unusual request to be posted to forward operating bases instead of shipboard duty. Rachel said nothing. But that's not your real file, is it? Morrison pulled a folder from his desk drawer, dropped it in front of her. This is your real file, the one they buried deep enough that it took me 4 phone calls and a personal favor to access. Rachel looked at the folder, saw her old name, her old rank, her old life printed in black and white. Marine First Lieutenant Rachel Garrison, Force Reconnaissance, Scout Sniper School, graduated top of class, 2 combat tours, Afghanistan and Iraq, 47 confirmed kills, possibly more. Recommended for Silver Star after the Helmand Providence operation. Morrison paused. Declared killed in action during a classified operation in the Hindu Kush 3 years ago. Only you didn't die, did you? Parts of me did. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have, sir. Rachel met his eyes steadily. What happened in the Hindu Kush is classified above your pay grade and mine. What matters is that Marine Lieutenant Garrison died in that valley. Navy Lieutenant Garrison was born 6 months later. Why? Because I was done killing people. Because I wanted to save lives instead of taking them. Because I couldn't look in the mirror anymore without seeing the faces of everyone I'd put in the ground. Rachel's voice was tight, controlled. I served my country. I did my job. And when my job became too much to carry, I found a different way to serve. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You could have told us, could have been upfront about your background. Would you have let a trained sniper with 47 kills work in your medical unit? Would you have trusted me around wounded soldiers? Or would you have assumed I was broken, damaged, a liability waiting to happen? Morrison didn't answer, which was answer enough. I came here to heal, Rachel continued. I came here to be something other than a weapon. But tonight, when those contractors came into my hospital and started executing patients, I had to choose. Be the nurse who watches people die, or be the Marine who stops it. Her hands clenched in her lap. I made my choice. I'd make it again. 9 confirmed kills in under an hour. That's not defense, Lieutenant. That's warfare. That's exactly what it was. They brought war to my hospital. I finished what they started. Senior Chief Randall spoke up from the doorway where he had been standing silently. With respect, Captain, I don't care what file says what. Lieutenant Garrison saved lives tonight. She saved my men. She saved Ramsey. She saved this entire compound from becoming a massacre. His voice was firm. Whatever she was before, whatever she is now, tonight, she was exactly who we needed her to be. Morrison looked between them, then back at Rachel. NCIS is going to want statements. Probably JAG too. This isn't going away quietly. I know. You could face disciplinary action, possibly charges depending on how the investigation goes. I know that too. Was it worth it? Rachel thought about Chen in recovery, about O'Connor still alive in his bed, about the patients who would have been executed if she'd stayed in her role as harmless Navy nurse. Yes, sir, it was worth it. Morrison closed the folder, pushed it back across the desk. Get some rest, Lieutenant. We'll deal with the bureaucracy tomorrow. Rachel stood, saluted, and walked out. Her body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, every muscle screaming, every nerve ending raw. She made it back to her quarters, a small room with a cot and a locker before her legs gave out. She sat on the edge of the cot, staring at her hands. They were clean now, scrubbed and sterile from Chen's surgery, but she could still feel the blood. Always the blood. It never really washed away, no matter how many times you scrubbed. Someone knocked on her door. Lieutenant, it's O'Connor. Rachel opened the door. The SEAL stood there in a hospital gown, his shoulder heavily bandaged, his face pale but determined. You should be in bed, Rachel said. Probably, but I needed to say something. O'Connor met her eyes. Martinez told me what happened. Told me you saved my life twice tonight. Once on the operating table, once when those contractors came for us. I was doing my job. No, your job is medicine. What you did tonight was something else. He paused. I don't know who you were before. I don't need to know. But I know who you are now. You're the person who stands between wounded soldiers and the people trying to kill them. That's worth something. Is it? Rachel heard the exhaustion in her own voice. I killed 9 people tonight, O'Connor. 9 human beings who woke up this morning expecting to live through the day. Now they're dead because of me. Now my whole team is alive because of you. Now every patient in that hospital gets to go home because of you, but O'Connor's voice was firm. You didn't start the fight, Lieutenant. You just finished it. He turned and walked away, moving carefully, favoring his wounded shoulder. Rachel closed the door, sat back down on the cot. Her hands were shaking now, the tremor she'd suppressed during the fighting finally breaking through. She watched her fingers twitch, watched them remember triggers and knives and all the ways a human body could be convinced to stop working. She'd killed 9 people tonight. 9 people who probably had families, friends' lives they'd left behind when they'd taken the Wagner Group contract. She should feel something about that. Remorse, guilt, horror at her own capacity for violence. Instead, she felt nothing. Just emptiness. Just the hollow place where her emotions used to live before the Hindu Kush took them away. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Doc, it's Martinez. Captain Morrison wants to see you again. Rachel stood, straightened her uniform, and followed Martinez back to the command building. Whatever came next, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else. Head up, eyes forward, ready for the consequences of her choices. Morrison was waiting with Ramsey and 2 men Rachel didn't recognize. They wore civilian clothes but carried themselves like military. Intelligence, probably. CIA or Defense Intelligence Agency. Lieutenant Garrison, this is Agent Marcus Webb and Agent Sarah Chen. Morrison caught himself. No relation to your petty officer Chen. They're here to debrief the operation. Webb spoke first. Lieutenant, we need to understand exactly what happened tonight, from the beginning. Every detail. Rachel walked them through it. The initial attack, the breach of the patients under threat. Her decision to engage the firefight, the 9 kills. She kept her voice clinical, factual, omitting nothing. When she finished, the room was silent. Chen, the agent, not the patient, leaned forward. You said you used captured weapons. Where did you learn to field strip and operate Wagner Group equipment? Afghanistan. My reconnaissance team tracked and engaged Russian-trained insurgents. We familiarize ourselves with their equipment. In the close quarters combat, the hand-to-hand Marine Martial Arts program, black belt, plus field experience. Webb and Chen exchanged glances. Webb cleared his throat. Lieutenant, we're prepared to make you an offer. Rachel's stomach tightened. What kind of offer? The kind where your skills don't go to waste saving the occasional wounded soldier. The kind where you could make a real difference in the intelligence war. Webb pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. We're recruiting for a special access program. Combat medicine meets field operations. You'd be embedded with special operations teams, providing medical support and tactical assistance. You want me to be a shooter again? We want you to be whatever the mission requires. Sometimes that's a medic. Sometimes it's something else. Rachel looked at the folder without touching it. I left that life behind. You left the Marines behind, but that life, Chen gestured at Rachel's blood-stained uniform, that life just proved it never left you. 9 Wagner contractors would testify to that if they could. I'm not interested. You should be, because right now you're facing a NCIS investigation that could end your career. Questions about excessive force, about whether a medical officer should have engaged instead of evacuating. Some people are calling what you did tonight heroic. Others are calling it murder. Webb's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. We can make those questions go away. Clean record, full reinstatement, and a chance to serve in a way that uses all your skills. In exchange for what? Your expertise, your training, your willingness to do what needs doing when it needs doing. Rachel stood. No. Lieutenant, I said no. I appreciate the offer, but I came here to save lives. If that means facing an investigation, I'll face it. If it means losing my commission, I'll accept it. But I'm not going back to being a weapon. She moved toward the door. If you'll excuse me, I have patients to check on. She walked out before anyone could stop her. The compound was quieter now, the immediate chaos settling into the exhausted aftermath of violence. Soldiers moved through the wreckage, cataloging damage-recovering bodies, beginning the long process of rebuilding. Rachel walked through it all, feeling disconnected, like she was watching herself from a distance. She found Senior Chief Randall in the medical bay sitting beside O'Connor's bed. The SEAL looked up when she entered. How are you feeling? Rachel asked O'Connor. Like I got shot and then caught in an explosion. So about average for a Tuesday. He managed a weak smile. Thanks again, Doc, for everything. Don't thank me, just heal. Randall gestured for Rachel to step outside with him. They walked to the edge of the compound where the perimeter barriers were being repaired. Morrison told me about the CIA offer, Randall said. Word travels fast. It always does. You turning it down? Already did. Why? From what I hear, it's a good deal. Clean record, fresh start work that matches your skill set. Rachel stared out at the desert, at the sand still settling from the storm. Because that work turns people into things they can't come back from. I've been that thing once already. I barely survived it. She looked at him. You understand that, don't you? What it costs to be a weapon for other people's wars? Randall was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, I understand. Then you understand why I can't go back. I do, but I also understand that tonight when it mattered, you were exactly the weapon we needed. That's going to haunt you. It already does. They stood in silence, 2 warriors who'd chosen different paths but ended up in the same place. Eventually, Randall spoke again. For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I'm glad you were here tonight. My men are alive because of you. That counts for something. Does it count enough to balance 9 bodies? In my book, yeah, it does. Randall walked away, leaving Rachel alone with the desert and her thoughts and the weight of choices that could never be unmade. She went back inside, back to the work that defined her now, checking vitals, adjusting medications, changing dressings, the quiet, essential work of keeping people alive. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't heroic, but it was honest, and honest was all she had left. Chen was awake when Rachel checked on her, groggy but alert. Hey, Rachel said softly, how's the pain? Manageable. Martinez has me on the good stuff. Chen's eyes focused on Rachel's face. Did we really get hit by Wagner Group? We did. And you really killed 9 of them. I did. Chen processed that slowly. Who are you, Doc? It was becoming the question of the night. Rachel didn't have a good answer. She wasn't sure she'd ever had a good answer. I'm the person who made sure you lived to be your sister's maid of honor in August, Rachel said finally. That's all that matters. Chen smiled weakly. That's enough for me. Rachel finished her rounds as dawn broke over the Syrian desert. The sun rose red and angry, painting the sand in shades of blood. She stood in the doorway of the medical compound, watching the light spread, feeling the warmth on her face. 9 people were dead because of her hands. Dozens more were alive for the same reason. The math should have been simple, should have added up to something clean and justified. Instead, it just felt like math cold and empty and insufficient. Someone had told her once that the hardest part of war wasn't the killing. It was coming home afterward and trying to pretend you were still the person who'd left. That person was gone, replaced by someone who knew exactly how much pressure it took to crush a windpipe, exactly where to put a knife to sever a carotid, exactly how many rounds center mass would drop a target before they could return fire. Rachel Garrison, the Marine, had died in the Hindu Kush. Rachel Garrison, the Navy nurse, had been born to take her place. But tonight had proven what she'd always feared deep down. They were the same person. They'd always been the same person. And that person was very good at killing people who needed killing. The NCIS investigators arrived on a Black Hawk helicopter at 0800 hours, exactly 12 hours after the last shot had been fired. Rachel watched them disembark from the medical compound, two agents in tactical khakis carrying tablets and recording equipment. Behind them came a Navy JAG officer, a woman with silver oak leaves on her collar, and the kind of expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Lieutenant Garrison, the lead NCIS agent, was tall, lean, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent years in war zones. Special Agent David Reeves, this is Agent Kelly Ortiz and Commander Patricia Sullivan from JAG. We need your statement regarding last night's incident. Incident? Rachel's voice was flat. Is that what we're calling it? That's what we're calling it until we determine exactly what happened. Commander Sullivan's tone was crisp, professional. You understand you are not under arrest, but you are required to cooperate fully with this investigation. I understand. They set up in Morrison's office, recording equipment on the desk, 3 chairs arranged in a semicircle facing Rachel's single seat. Interview tactics designed to make the subject feel isolated and outnumbered. Rachel had been through resistance training. She knew the game. Walk us through the evening, Reeves said. Start with the initial attack. Rachel did, keeping her voice steady and her facts precise. Timestamps, locations, actions taken. She omitted nothing because omission would look like guilt, and she had no intention of appearing guilty for saving lives. At what point did you decide to engage the hostiles? Ortiz asked. When they entered the medical bay and began executing patients. You could have taken cover, called for help, waited for the SEALs to respond. The SEALs were pinned at the perimeter. Help wasn't coming. And while I was taking cover, those contractors would have killed every wounded man in that hospital. So you took it upon yourself to engage 9 armed professional soldiers in close quarters combat. Sullivan's eyebrow rose. That seems like an extraordinary decision for a medical officer. It was the only decision. My job is to keep patients alive. That's what I did. Reeves leaned forward. Lieutenant, your service record shows you're a nurse with 8 months of field experience prior to this deployment. Yet last night you demonstrated combat skills consistent with special operations training. Care to explain that discrepancy? Here it was. The question she'd known was coming. Rachel met his eyes steadily. My service record shows what the Navy wants it to show. My real record is classified. We have clearance. Then you already know what you're asking me to repeat. Sullivan pulled out a folder, the same one Morrison had shown her the night before. Marine First Lieutenant Rachel Garrison, Force Recon Scout Sniper, presumed killed in action 3 years ago during a classified operation in Afghanistan. She looked up. Except you weren't killed, were you? Parts of me were. That's not an answer, Lieutenant. It's the only one I'm authorized to give. What happened in Afghanistan is above your clearance level and mine. What matters is that I survived, I recovered, and I chose to serve in a different capacity. By hiding your combat background and posing as a regular medical officer. Reeves's voice carried an edge now. That's called fraud, Lieutenant. That's called following orders. I was told to assume a new identity, a new role. I followed those orders. If you have a problem with that, take it up with whoever gave them. Ortiz jumped in. Let's focus on last night. 9 confirmed kills. Can you walk us through each engagement? Rachel did in clinical detail. The first contractor, through the door, the controlled pair to center mass. The second and third in the medical bay. The knife throw, the close quarters combat, every shot, every decision, every moment of violence translated into bureaucratic language. When she finished, the room was silent. You're describing executions, Sullivan said finally, not self-defense, not even combat engagement. Executions. I'm describing survival, mine and my patients. You shot one man in the face at point-blank range. He was bringing his weapon up. I eliminated the threat. You used a knife on another. I was out of ammunition and he was between me and more wounded soldiers. I used what was available. Sullivan's jaw tightened. Lieutenant, I want to be clear about something. The laws of armed conflict don't give medical personnel unlimited license to engage in combat. Your role is to treat the wounded, not wage war. My role is to protect my patients. When armed men entered my hospital with orders to kill everyone inside, protecting my patients meant killing those men first. And you felt qualified to make that determination. I was the only one there to make it. Reeves spoke up again. Tell us about the Hindu Kush operation. The one that supposedly killed you. I can't or won't. Both. It's classified above your pay grade. If you want details, submit a request through proper channels. Good luck getting approval. We don't need details. We need to understand if there's a pattern of behavior here, a history of excessive force or unauthorized engagement. Rachel's hands clenched in her lap. You want to know if I'm damaged, if I'm a liability, if what happened last night was the act of a trained professional or an unstable veteran having a breakdown. She leaned forward. I killed 9 people last night. Every single one was a legitimate threat actively engaged in murdering unarmed patients. I used appropriate force for the situation. If I'd used less force, people under my care would be dead. If that makes me damaged or unstable, then I guess I'll have to live with that assessment. The interview went on for another hour, covering the same ground from different angles, looking for inconsistencies that didn't exist because Rachel was telling the truth. Eventually, Sullivan called a break. Rachel stepped outside, found Senior Chief Randall waiting in the corridor. How bad is it? He asked. Could go either way. They're trying to decide if I'm a hero or a war criminal. You're neither. You're just someone who did what needed doing. Tell that to JAG. Randall's expression darkened. I gave my statement this morning. Told them if you hadn't engaged, my entire team plus 20 patients would be dead right now. Told them you saved more lives in one night than most medical officers save in an entire deployment. They're not interested in lives saved. They're interested in rules followed. And I broke a lot of rules last night. Then the rules are garbage. Randall's voice carried the conviction of someone who'd survived too many fights to care about bureaucracy. You know what O'Connor told them? He said you're the only reason he's alive to see his daughter's first birthday next month. He said if they court-martial you, he'll testify at the trial and tell the whole damn world that the Navy's more concerned with paperwork than protecting wounded soldiers. Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. He shouldn't risk his career for me. He's not risking it for you. He's risking it for what's right. Randall paused. We all are. Before Rachel could respond, Martinez appeared, his face pale. Doc, we've got a problem. Chen's wound is infected. Fever spiking wound site showing signs of necrosis. I think it's necrotizing fasciitis. Rachel's stomach dropped. Flesh-eating bacteria. In a field hospital with limited resources. Get her to OR2. I need surgical instruments, antibiotics, in every set of hands you can find. She ran the NCIS investigation, forgotten her entire focus narrowing to the immediate crisis. Chen was going to lose her leg if Rachel didn't move fast. Might lose her life. Chen was conscious when they wheeled her in, her face flushed with fever, her eyes glassy. Doc, what's happening to me? Your wound's infected. I need to clean it out, remove the dead tissue. It's going to hurt. Will I lose the leg? Rachel paused, meeting Chen's terrified eyes. I don't know, but I'm going to fight like hell to make sure you don't. The surgery was brutal. Necrotic tissue had spread faster than Rachel had anticipated, tracking up Chen's thigh toward her hip. Rachel cut and debrided, removing everything that looked questionable, pushing the boundaries between aggressive treatment and mutilation. BP's dropping, Martinez said. 90/55. Push fluids. Start broad-spectrum antibiotics, maximum dose. Rachel's hands moved without hesitation, but inside she was calculating odds. The infection was bad, really bad. If it had reached Chen's bloodstream, if she was going septic, then all the surgery in the world wouldn't matter. Temps 103.8. Ice packs. Get her temperature down. Rachel kept cutting, kept removing tissue that should have been healthy and pink, but instead was gray and dying. Sarah, stay with me. You've got a wedding to attend in August. Your sister needs her maid of honor. Chen's eyes fluttered. Michelle, that's right. Michelle's counting on you. So you stay conscious. You stay fighting. An hour into the surgery, Rachel hit healthy tissue. The infection hadn't spread past Chen's mid-thigh. The leg could be saved. Probably. Pressure's stabilizing, Martinez said. 95 over 62. Good, keep monitoring. Any drop you tell me immediately. Rachel began closing layer by layer, making sure drainage was adequate. Infection could return, could flare up again, but for now, Chen had a chance. When they finally wheeled Chen to recovery, Rachel's hands were shaking, not from the surgery itself, but from the knowledge of how close they'd come. Another hour, maybe two, and Chen would have been septic. Another day, and she'd have been dead. You saved her leg, Martinez said quietly. Most surgeons would have amputated. Most surgeons would have been right to. But she's young, she's strong, and she deserves a chance to walk normally again. Rachel stripped off her gloves. Monitor her vitals every 10 minutes. Any sign of infection, spreading any fever spike, you get me immediately. Yes, ma'am. Rachel walked out and nearly collided with Agent Reeves. We need to finish the interview, he said. I need to check on my patients. The interview takes priority. No, it doesn't. Lives take priority. Your investigation can wait. Rachel moved past him, heading for the ward. He grabbed her arm. She spun, and for just a moment, the person she'd been last night was back in her eyes. Reeves let go immediately. I'll finish your interview when my patients are stable, Rachel said, her voice cold. Until then, you can wait, or you can file whatever charges you want. I don't care which. She walked away before he could respond. O'Connor was sitting up when she checked on him, looking remarkably good for someone who'd been shot and caught in an explosion less than 24 hours ago. Heard about Chen, he said. She going to make it. If the antibiotics work and the infection doesn't come back, yes. If not, Rachel didn't finish the sentence. O'Connor understood the stakes. You're collecting a lot of IOS, Doc. I don't want IOS. I want people to heal and go home. What about you? When do you get to go home? Rachel sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't think I have a home anymore. Not really. The person who had a home died 3 years ago in Afghanistan. That's bullshit. She looked at him sharply. O'Connor met her gaze without flinching. You're not dead. You're right here saving lives, fighting battles, being exactly who you need to be when you need to be it. That's not death, Lieutenant. That's survival. And if you ask me, survival's the bravest thing any of us can do. Before Rachel could respond, explosions erupted outside, not close, maybe a mile away toward the main base perimeter. But explosions nonetheless, multiple impacts, the distinctive sound of mortars or rockets. Get down. Rachel pulled O'Connor off the bed, ignoring his protests about his shoulder. Martinez was already moving, getting patients to the floor away from windows. The compound's alarm blared. Voices shouted outside. More explosions closer this time. Randall burst through the door. Wagner Group's back, bigger force this time, hitting multiple positions. Captain says we need to evacuate medical now. We can't evacuate, Rachel said. Chen just came out of surgery. O'Connor's post-op, half these patients can't be moved safely. Then we defend again. With what we used most of our ammunition last night, we've got maybe 50 rounds between all of us. Another explosion close enough to shake the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then we improvise. Randall grabbed a rifle from a fallen contractor, one they'd stored after last night's attack. How many staff can fight? Fight none. They're medical corps. How many can hold a weapon and pull a trigger when someone tries to kill their patients? Rachel understood what he was asking. All of them. Then arm them. Morrison's sending reinforcements, but they're 10 minutes out. We need to hold for 10 minutes. Rachel moved fast, distributing weapons to staff who'd never expected to use them. Martinez got an M4. The other corpsmen got sidearms. Even the Army privates who'd been pulling security got upgraded to contractor weapons. Listen to me, Rachel said, her voice carrying to every person in the compound. Last night we survived because we fought back. Tonight's no different. You see someone trying to hurt your patients, you stop them. You don't think, you don't hesitate, you just stop them. Understand? They nodded, scared but determined. The first contractors hit the eastern wall again, breaching where they'd breached before Bowen. But this time they weren't met with surprise and chaos. They were met with coordinated fire from defenders who knew exactly what they were protecting. Rachel fired from the doorway of the surgical tent, controlled burst, making every round count. Beside her, Martinez did the same, his hands steady despite his fear. Randall was on the roof with a captured rifle, picking off targets with the precision of a trained SEAL. Reloading, Rachel dropped behind cover, changed magazines. 15 rounds left in her vest. After that, she was down to a sidearm and hope. A contractor made it through the perimeter, running fast toward the main ward. Rachel stepped out, fired twice. He went down. Another one this time throwing a grenade. Rachel shot him before he could release. The grenade fell at his feet, detonated. The blast took out 2 more contractors behind him. "They're pulling back," Randall's voice carried from the roof. "East side's retreating." But the west side was still engaged. Rachel could hear automatic fire, could see muzzle flashes. She grabbed Martinez. "Stay here. Defend this position." "Where are you going?" "To finish this." She ran toward the west side, toward the sound of gunfire. Found 3 contractors pinned down by accurate fire from someone in the medical supply building. She circled wide, came up on their flank, and opened fire. 2 went down immediately. The third spun toward her, his weapon coming up. She fired her last round, watched him fall. Click. Empty. Rachel dropped the rifle, pulled her sidearm. 7 rounds. That was all she had left. More contractors were coming. She could see them in the distance, regrouping, preparing for another assault. This wasn't a raid. This was a sustained attack, and they were running out of ammunition. Then she heard it. The distinctive thump of rotor blades. 2 Apache attack helicopters crested the ridgeline, their weapons hot. The contractors scattered, but not fast enough. The Apaches opened up 30mm cannons, tearing through vehicles and positions. It was over in 90 seconds. When the silence fell, Rachel was standing in the middle of the compound, sidearm raised, breathing hard. Around her, staff and soldiers emerged from cover, checking for wounded, accounting for everyone. "Casualty report," Rachel shouted. 2 wounded, non-critical, Martinez called back. "All patients accounted for." Rachel lowered her weapon, felt her legs trying to give out. She'd done it again, survived again, kept everyone alive again. Randall appeared beside her. "You okay?" "Define okay." "Fair point." He looked around at the destruction, the bodies, the proof that violence had returned for a second night. "NCIS is going to have questions about this too." "Let them question. I'm done explaining myself." Rachel holstered her sidearm. "I did my job. That's all that matters." Agent Reeves approached, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Garrison, we need to talk." "Not now." "Yes, now, because what I just watched changes everything." Rachel turned to face him, exhausted and done with bureaucracy. "What did you watch? Agent Reeves, a medical officer defending her patients, or a war criminal executing contractors?" "I watched someone save 40 lives with 15 rounds and a sidearm. I watched medical staff fight like infantry because their commanding officer gave them permission to be heroes." He paused. "Commander Sullivan and I just had a long conversation. The investigation's being closed." Rachel's breath caught. "What?" "You're being cleared. Full exoneration. No charges, no disciplinary action, nothing on your record except a commendation for valor under fire." "Why?" "Because Sullivan realized something. The rules are written for peacetime, for controlled environments where medical officers have the luxury of staying out of combat. But this," he gestured at the compound, "this is war, real war. And in war, sometimes the only thing standing between patients and death is someone willing to fight back." Rachel felt something loosen in her chest, some tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "So I'm free to go. You're free to stay free, to go free, to do whatever you want. Your record's clear." Reeves extended his hand. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, you did the right thing. Both nights." She shook his hand, not trusting herself to speak. When he walked away, she was alone in the compound, with the dawn breaking and the smell of cordite fading and the weight of 2 nights' violence pressing down on her shoulders. O'Connor found her an hour later, standing at the perimeter looking out at the desert. "Heard you're in the clear," he said. "I am." "So what now? You staying or going?" Rachel thought about that. About the compound that had become a battlefield twice in 2 nights. About the patients who'd survived because she'd been willing to cross lines other medical officers wouldn't. About the person she tried to bury who kept crawling back out whenever violence came calling. "I'm staying," she said finally. "These people need a nurse. And if they need something else, if violence comes back again, then they need that too." "You're okay with being both the healer and the fighter?" Rachel looked at her hands, at the steady fingers that could suture wounds or pull triggers with equal precision. "I don't know if he'll ever be okay with it, but I've stopped pretending I can be just one or the other. Maybe that's enough." O'Connor nodded. "For what it's worth, Doc, I'm glad you're staying. My daughter deserves to meet the woman who made sure her dad came home." He walked away, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts and her choices and the uncertain future stretching out before her. The sun rose higher, burning away the last shadows. Somewhere in the compound, patients were waking up asking for medication, complaining about breakfast. Normal sounds, living sounds. Rachel took one last look at the desert, then turned and walked back toward the medical bay. There was work to do. There was always work to do. And she was exactly the person to do it. 3 weeks passed before Sarah Chen could stand without assistance. Rachel watched from the doorway as Martinez guided her through physical therapy, Chen's face twisted with determination and pain in equal measure. The infection had cleared, the wound had closed, but the muscle damage was extensive. Walking would take months. Running might never happen. How's she doing? Randall appeared beside Rachel, his arm finally out of the sling. Better than she should be. Worse than she wants to be. Rachel crossed her arms. She's asking when she can return to duty. What did you tell her? That she needs to focus on healing, not timelines. She didn't like that answer. Nobody ever does. Randall watched Chen take another painful step. O'Connor's being medevaced stateside tomorrow. Full recovery expected. He asked me to give you something. He handed Rachel a small box. Inside was a Bronze Star medal and a handwritten note. For my daughter's godmother. Thank you for making sure I'd be there to ask, Liam. Rachel stared at the medal, feeling something crack inside her chest. I'm not her godmother. You are now. O'Connor and his wife already filed the paperwork. You don't get a vote. I barely know him. You saved his life twice and killed for him. In his book, that's family. Randall's voice softened. Take the win, Lieutenant. You've earned it. Rachel closed the box, slipped it into her pocket. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the weight of being trusted with someone's child when she'd spent 3 years convinced she wasn't trustworthy at all. Captain Morrison wants to see you, Randall said. Something about new orders. Rachel's stomach tightened. New orders meant change, and change meant leaving patients who still needed her. Now, he said, it's urgent. Morrison's office was crowded when Rachel arrived. The captain sat behind his desk, flanked by Agent Reeves and a man Rachel didn't recognize. 50s, gray hair, civilian clothes that screamed Pentagon bureaucrat. Lieutenant Garrison, this is Deputy Director James Hartley, Defense Intelligence Agency. Morrison gestured to the stranger. He has a proposition for you. I already turned down the CIA's offer, Rachel said. This isn't CIA. Hartley's voice was measured, careful. This is something different. A new program we're developing. Medical personnel with combat backgrounds embedded with special operations teams. Not as shooters, as force multipliers. Sounds like the same offer with different words. It's not. The CIA wanted you to be a weapon who occasionally provided medical care. We want you to be a medic who can fight when necessary. There's a distinction. Rachel sat not because she was interested, but because her legs were tired of holding her up. What's the mission? Providing advanced trauma care in contested environments. Places where traditional medical evacuation is impossible. Places where the enemy specifically targets medical personnel. Hartley pulled out a tablet, showed her images of destroyed field hospitals, executed medical staff. These attacks are becoming more common. Wagner Group, Taliban insurgents, Syrian government forces, they've all adopted the same tactic. Kill the medics, demoralize the fighting force. So you want medics who can't be killed. We want medics who can defend themselves and their patients when defense becomes necessary. You've proven that's possible. Hartley leaned forward. This isn't about turning you into a soldier again, Lieutenant. It's about acknowledging that the modern battlefield doesn't respect the distinction between combatant and non-combatant. We need people who can navigate that reality. Rachel looked at Morrison. You endorsing this? I'm saying you should hear him out. What happened here shouldn't have happened. Medical compounds should be safe, but they're not, and pretending otherwise gets people killed. How many people would be in this program? Initially 20, all with medical backgrounds, all with prior combat experience. You'd train together, deploy together, operate as a specialized unit. Hartley pulled up more files. We've already identified 15 candidates. Former Army medics who served with Rangers or Special Forces, Navy corpsmen from SEAL teams, combat nurses from Marine recon units, people like you who've seen both sides. And if I say no, then you stay here, keep doing what you're doing, and hope Wagner Group doesn't come back for round 3. Hartley's eyes were serious. But they will come back, Lieutenant. They don't leave loose ends, and you're the biggest loose end they have. The medic who killed 9 of their contractors and survived a second assault. You think they're going to let that stand? Rachel's jaw tightened. She'd known this was coming, had felt it in her bones every night when she couldn't sleep. Wagner Group had a reputation to maintain. Losing twice to the same target wasn't acceptable. When would this start? 6 weeks, training facility in Virginia, specialized curriculum, full mission preparation. After that, deployment rotation similar to what SEALs run, 6 months operational, 3 months stateside. And my patients here would be transferred to your replacement, another combat nurse, someone with the right background. Morrison spoke up. I've already identified 3 candidates. Your patients would be in good hands. Rachel thought about Chen, about O'Connor, about Martinez, and all the other staff who'd learned to fight because she'd shown them how. Walking away felt like abandonment. I need time to think about it. You have 72 hours. Hartley stood. After that, we need an answer. This program launches with or without you, Lieutenant. But it would be better with you. He left. Rachel sat in silence, processing. You're going to take it, Morrison said. It wasn't a question. Am I? You know you are. Because staying here means looking over your shoulder every day waiting for Wagner to return. It means putting everyone around you at risk because you're a target. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Hartley's program gives you a chance to use your skills somewhere they're needed without endangering people who can't defend themselves. It also means admitting I can't just be a nurse anymore. You admitted that 2 attacks ago. Now you're just accepting reality. Rachel stood, walked to the window. The compound had been rebuilt. Reinforced barriers replacing the destroyed ones, new equipment installed where old had been destroyed. It looked stronger. It looked prepared. But preparation only went so far against determination. I'll think about it, she said again. The next morning, Chen collapsed during physical therapy. Rachel was checking inventory when Martinez's voice cracked over the radio. Doc, get to PT. Now Chen's down. She ran, found Chen on the floor, seizing. Her eyes had rolled back, her body rigid foam at the corners of her mouth. How long? Rachel knelt beside her, checking. Airway, breathing, circulation. 30 seconds, maybe 40. Martinez's hand shook. She was walking, then she just, get me diazepam, 5 milligrams, IV now. Rachel held Chen's head, protecting it from impact. Sarah, I need you to come back. Come on, stay with me. The seizure broke after 90 seconds. Chen's body went limp, her breathing ragged. Rachel checked her pupils. Unequal. That wasn't good. Get her to CT, I need to see her brain now. They wheeled Chen to the imaging suite, Rachel running beside the gurney. Something was wrong, something beyond the leg wound, beyond the infection. Seizures didn't come from nowhere. The CT scan showed it. A small bleed in Chen's brain, pressure building, likely from a blood clot that had traveled from her leg wound during the infection. Uncommon, but possible. Deadly if untreated. We need to evacuate her, Martinez said. She needs a neurosurgeon, specialized equipment. We can't handle this here. Medevac's grounded. Sandstorms coming in won't clear for 6 hours. Rachel studied the scan, calculating. We need to reduce the intracranial pressure or she'll herniate. That means burr holes. You're not a neurosurgeon. I'm what she's got. Rachel turned to him. Get me a cranial drill kit. I'm going to tap the bleed manually. Doc, that's her only chance. Either I do this or we watch her die. Choose. Martinez ran to get the equipment. Rachel scrubbed in her hands, moving through the familiar ritual. Even as her mind raced through anatomy she hadn't reviewed since medical school. Burr holes were emergency procedures, crude but effective. Drill through the skull, release the pressure, buy time until proper neurosurgery was available. Simple in theory, terrifying in practice. Chen was unconscious when Rachel made the first incision, marking the location based on the CT findings. The drill whirred, bone dust rising. Rachel's hands were steady, her breathing controlled. This was just another procedure. Just another life depending on her not making mistakes. The drill bit broke through into the subdural space. Blood and cerebrospinal fluid drained, pressure releasing. Chen's vitals immediately improved. BP stabilizing. Martinez said, his voice tight with relief. Pupils equalizing. Rachel made a second burr hole on the opposite side, ensuring adequate drainage. When she finished, Chen's breathing was stronger, her color better. Not fixed, but stable. Alive. Monitor her every 5 minutes. When the medevac can fly, she goes immediately. Rachel stripped off her gloves, suddenly aware of how close they'd come. She needs a real neurosurgeon, not a nurse with a drill and hope. You saved her life again. I bought her time. There's a difference. But Martinez was right. Rachel had saved Chen's life again, had crossed another line into territory she wasn't trained for, because the alternative was watching someone die. She walked outside, needed air, needed distance from the medical bay, and the constant reminder that no matter how much she did, it was never quite enough. Randall found her at the perimeter, sitting on a concrete barrier, staring at nothing. Heard about Chen? Hell of a thing doing brain surgery in a field hospital. It wasn't brain surgery, it was emergency pressure relief. Most people wouldn't know the difference. Most people wouldn't have tried. He sat beside her. You're taking Hartley's offer, aren't you? Rachel didn't answer immediately. She thought about Chen, about O'Connor, about all the lives that had hung in the balance over the past 3 weeks. Thought about the weight of being the only thing standing between wounded soldiers and death. If I stay here, more people will die because I'm not enough. I'm one person with limited training trying to handle situations that require specialists. She looked at him. If I join Hartley's program, maybe I can make sure people never get to field hospitals like this in the first place. Maybe I can keep them alive long enough to reach real surgeons. That's a yes, then. That's a yes. Randall nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. People like you, people who can do what needs doing without hesitation. We need more of that, not less. People like me are why wars keep happening. No, people like you are why anyone survives them. He stood, extended a hand. Good luck, Lieutenant. Something tells me you're going to change a lot of lives with this program. She shook his hand, feeling the calluses and scars that marked a life of violence in service of something larger. They were the same calluses on her hands now, the same scars. Chen woke up 6 hours later, groggy and confused. Rachel was there when her eyes opened. What happened? You had a brain bleed. I relieved the pressure. You're being medevaced to Germany for proper neurosurgery. Rachel checked Chen's pupils again. Still equal. Still reactive. You scared us pretty badly. Did I miss my sister's wedding? Wedding's not until August. You've got plenty of time. Rachel smiled, something she hadn't done in days. But you're going to have one hell of a story to tell at the reception. About the nurse who did brain surgery with a drill. About the nurse who refused to give up on you. Multiple times. Chen's hand found Rachel's, squeezed weakly. Thank you for everything. For not letting me die. Thank you for giving me something worth fighting for. The medevac arrived as the sandstorm cleared. Rachel watched them load Chen aboard, watched the helicopter lift off and disappear into the Syrian sky. Another patient saved, another life preserved, another reason to keep going. She found Morrison in his office that evening. I'm taking Hartley's offer. Morrison nodded like he'd never doubted it. When do you leave? Soon as my replacement arrives, couple days maybe. You did good work here, Lieutenant. Saved a lot of lives. Changed a lot of minds about what medical personnel can do when they have to. I just did my job. No, your job is medicine. What you did here was war, and you did it better than most people who are actually trained for it. Morrison stood, extended his hand. Don't lose that whatever happens next. Don't let them turn you into just a shooter. Stay a healer first. That's what makes you dangerous. Rachel shook his hand, understanding what he meant. Shooters were a dime a dozen. Healers who could fight were rare. Healers who would fight were rarer still. Her replacement arrived 48 hours later, a Navy nurse named Captain Elizabeth Warren, with 2 deployments and a calm competence that immediately put Rachel at ease. Warren could handle this. The patients would be safe. Rachel packed her gear, said her goodbyes. Martinez hugged her, which surprised them both. The other staff lined up to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her she'd changed how they saw themselves and their work. Randall drove her to the landing zone where the transport helicopter waited. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I don't change my mind. Yeah, I figured. He handed her a small package. From the team. Don't open it until you're airborne. She took it, climbed aboard the helicopter. As it lifted off, she watched the compound shrink below her, watched the medical bay and the barriers and all the places where she'd fought and bled and saved lives. Once they were cruising altitude, she opened Randall's package. Inside was a patch, custom-made, showing a caduceus, the medical symbol, but instead of the traditional staff, it was wrapped around a rifle. Above it, text read, "We heal those we can, we fight for the rest." Below that smaller text, "From the brothers you saved, the family you earned." Rachel stared at the patch for a long time, feeling something shift inside her. She'd spent 3 years trying to be just a nurse, trying to leave the Marine behind. But maybe that had been the wrong goal. Maybe the answer wasn't choosing between healer and warrior. Maybe the answer was being both. She pinned the patch to her vest, settled back in her seat. Virginia waited. Training waited. A whole new kind of mission waited. But for the first time in 3 years, Rachel Garrison didn't feel like she was running from something. She felt like she was running toward it. The helicopter banked east toward home, toward whatever came next. Rachel closed her eyes, let the vibration of the rotors wash over her. She'd killed 15 people over 3 weeks. She'd saved 40. The math still didn't feel clean, still didn't add up to anything simple or justified. But O'Connor would see his daughter's first birthday. Chen would walk her sister down the aisle. Dozens of soldiers would go home to families who'd almost lost them. That had to count for something. That had to be enough. The patch on her vest said it all. They healed those they could. They fought for the rest. Rachel had spent 3 years trying to be one or the other. Now she understood she'd always been both from the moment she'd picked up her first rifle to the moment she'd sutured her first wound. The Marine and the nurse weren't separate people. They were the same person, always had been, two sides of the same stubborn refusal to let good people die when she had the power to stop it. She opened her eyes, looked out at the desert passing below, at the country she was leaving behind. Somewhere down there, medical personnel were treating wounded soldiers, saving lives, doing the quiet essential work that kept wars from becoming massacres. And somewhere down there, someone was targeting them for it. Rachel touched the patch again, felt the weight of O'Connor's metal in her pocket, remembered the look in Chen's eyes when she'd woken up alive against all odds. She was done pretending she could be just one thing, done apologizing for the skills that had kept people breathing, done hiding who she really was. The Navy SEALs, they hadn't known their combat nurse was a Marine until armed men stormed the field hospital. Now everyone knew, and Rachel Garrison was done being anyone's secret. She was a healer who fought a warrior who saved lives, a woman who died in the Hindu Kush, and come back as something the world needed more than it wanted to admit. The helicopter flew on, carrying her toward a future where she wouldn't have to choose, where healing and fighting were two parts of the same mission. Where being both wasn't a contradiction, it was exactly what made her dangerous enough to keep people alive.